what I had to endure by myself with little to no support.
Yeah. Yeah. When you say little to no support, man, and again, I know you've stated this before to me, but I did want to kind of just re-ask the question. But when you say that, you're saying like no siblings, no parents, grandparents. Like, well, I know you say your grandma was definitely someone that was pivotal to your poetry writing, things of that nature. But for the most part, though, it was no one that came to any type of aid.
Uh, let's put it this way: when I turned 21, I was
Hmm.
living with my grandparents, and my grandparents lived by a lot of family. A lot of family stayed around them. My family left for my mom had her dream job, and she was offered it out of state, so
Yeah.
that's why we moved. But everybody else pretty much stayed in um, Iowa,
Mm.
and my 21st birthday, it's supposed to be exciting. It's supposed to be whatever. You're supposed to go out and have drinks with friends and family and all that stuff. Um, and maybe it's not too significant, but I didn't get asked to go out on my 21st until it was somebody else's birthday in my family.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, it's like, my family never cared about me. I guess the best example I could do is when I finally told my parents that I didn't want to be around them and their toxicity anymore.
Hmm.
When my aunt messaged me going, you should be around your mother. You're only going to have one mother in life, and blah blah blah. So the problem with that is she was being hypocritical at
Yeah.
that point in time, and I pretty much told her, "You want me to believe that you're not trying to emotionally manipulate me to talk to my mom again when
Mm.
you spent the last 3 years of your own mother's life ignoring her and not talking to her.
Yeah.
So you want to talk to me about this, and maybe you're talking from a mistake setting, whatever,
Yeah.
sure, fine. But your actions showed that you didn't care. My action showed I cared way too much.
Yeah.
Even after the psych ward, I went back to my parents' house
Wow.
and I lived with them for another over a year, and
Wow.
it was just nothing but disregard and dismissal of me. It's nothing. Even my own sister told me that I shouldn't talk to her until I'm in the same uh, tax bracket as her.
Mm.
So uh, no family there to support. Even when I tried to talk about my emotions, they're like, "Oh yeah, well, our entire family has mental issues." I'm like, and our entire family isn't going to seek professional help for that. So that is a problem to me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
most of my friends have lived pretty normal lives with normal upbringings with normal, loving, caring parents.
Wow.
So
Wow.
you know, I know they want to help, but they don't. They can't. They shouldn't. And I don't want them to understand anymore. Not
Mm.
I don't want them to understand me, but when you know what I know, you're. I guess let's put it this way: the more a human understands and knows reality, the
Yeah.
harder it is for them to live and be
Hmm.
happy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a deep truth, man. That's a deep truth. Like, so in a sense, you're saying like, as we're younger, as we're younger, we're kids. Everything just seems to be all lollipops and rainbows. But then the older you grow, you start to understand death. You start to understand the lies that you were probably told. You start to see the world in a more dimmer light. Is that pretty much what you're saying?
I think you can grow up and still have that same childlike sense, but I
Mm.
think the more traumas,
Mm.
the
Hmm.
more of that you go through, I think that brings more reality. And I think the more you make the same mistakes,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
the more you double down and try to go, oh well, maybe you think you know everything about
Mm.
relationships, and you go into a
Hmm.
relationship every single time you get cheated on. Um,
Hmm.
most people are going to be like, oh, well, I got cheated on. There's something wrong. There's something I don't know that I'm doing wrong.
Hmm.
Whereas other people will be like, no, I'm that was just one time. That was a mistake. Blah, 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 it can happen again. Or
Yeah.
it won't happen again. And then it happens again and again and again. You know, you go through enough of those, you learn the hard way. But when you're I don't know, when you don't live in a normal home,
Mm.
you tend to become a lot older mentally than you are physically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think the longer you let's see, the longer the longer I would have stayed in the narcissistic abusive household,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
progressive gray matter would be in my brain,
Mm.
which is linked to dementia and others, like lots of memory loss at an older age.
Mm.
So the effects, it's dangerous, it's deadly, and the longer you are in that, the more damage it does to your mind. Now, again, when you stop interacting with that, uh, you obviously go back to more of a normal state. I don't know if it'll ever go back to where it was before,
Yeah.
but it'll definitely be much better. The progression will be a lot less. It'll be it'll get better.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that too, man, because I actually I read a pretty good book by one of my favorite authors. He actually was interviewed by like Oprah, Joe Rogan, people like that. His name is Stephen Pressfield, amazing author, and he wrote a book called The Art of, I think it's called The Art of War. No, I'm sorry, the War of Art. That's what it's called. The War of Art. And within that book, he talks about pretty much how you have people who, let's say in some instance, they are diagnosed with cancer and they've been working all their life a 9 to 5 job, just typical 9 to 5, doing things that, just miserable job. They hate it. They didn't enjoy it. They didn't like, what was going on with their life. They're just not happy. They're living, paying bills, just that around the clock, everyday type of work mentality.
With
But then,
emotions.
yeah, they're in emotions, exactly. And then all of a sudden they're hit with, you have cancer or you have terminal this or that. And all of a sudden he says that it's funny how you then see where that person, all of a sudden their life just changes, their perspective changes. Their ego is out the window. They start to think about life and death, all the things that they haven't done, this and that. And then he says you have some people who then go and start that charity group they always wanted to start, or start that band, or start that painting, or start painting or writing poetry and going to poetry nights when they, doing things that they always wanted to do and never did. And then he says it's funny how you then start to hear stories of they're in remission. They're actually recovering. They're getting better. You know what I'm saying? So it kind of feels like you hit on that a little bit. But those things, that type of perspective and those type of stories to me, that really sticks out because I truly believe in kind of what you're saying. It's the environment that can feed, nurture those traumatizing experiences. And if you did not, or if you don't get out of them, you only in a sense store up for more trauma and just tragedy that then spreads like cancer.
Yeah, I think I don't think I think you agree with me. But just to clarify for whomever might be watching, um,
Hmm.
job isn't really isn't a bad life. It's not a bad life,
Right. Hmm.
but your mentality is what dictates that. If you have
Exactly.
a negative mentality to a 9 to 5 job, you'll
Hmm.
hate it, and you definitely will, and that will progressively make you more bitter and more angry and more this.
Hmm.
It's all about the mindset on that. There's people that are extremely successful in music and art, and
Hmm.
they hate their job. They hate it,
Hmm.
but they do it because it makes them a lot of money, and it does this, it does that. So you have to the benefits have to outweigh the negatives,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
I think when you hate a 9 to 5, I just don't think there's enough benefits there to, if you have to provide for a family and whatnot, I would not leave that job unless you have another lined up, of course.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even when you're single and alone, I think that's the best bet to do as well.
Yeah.
But you know, if you have a negative mindset in those 9 to 5 jobs or something like that, you have to either make time for yourself outside of that job to do the things you love, so that way you're not always
Mm-hmm.
mindset, or you need to
Mm-hmm.
find a new career path or something else that will help benefit you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. 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 And that's what I was stressing. Yeah, exactly. It's that aspect of this person who's just miserable where they are. Like they have a job, or like you said, it could be anything, and they're just miserable in it. But then once they start to feed that passion, once they start to feed those desires, you start to see a really big shift, and then also when they start hanging around people who also don't bash them over the head, telling them how worthless and how much of a piece of crap they are, and how they aren't good at what they do, or how they will never amount to what they are doing. When you stop hanging around people like that, but instead you hang around people who pour into what you're doing and who encourage you and cheer you on, it's a huge difference, man. You feel it in the air, you feel it as soon as you walk in the door.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh yeah, these people are for me.
Yeah,
you
what
know
was that? I think the first time I heard this was from Scooby Doo.
mm.
Oh, you know what? It wasn't from. I think the visuals from Scooby Doo, but it's more
Mhm.
like you could cut the tension with a knife.
Yes, yes, exactly, it's that thick in the air. Exactly, you can cut it with a knife. Yeah, I love that, and you're exactly right, man. When you're in a space where there's support, where there's love, where there's encouragement in what it is that you want to do. But then you also know when there isn't, when there is this hatred, when there are people who are just bashing you down just for the sake of it. They don't even want you to dream, you
Nope.
know. For you to dream is a sin. It's like, how dare you think you can, you know?
Those people's dreams are to destroy yours. That's what makes them tick.
Oh my man. Man, that's a good one. Most people's dreams are to destroy yours.
Yep, it's true. So true.
Oh,
And
goodness.
I think one of the weirdest things is when you start becoming more successful
Yep.
in your life, where you've not been before.
Yep.
There are going to be friends and other people that are going to be like, "Hey, man, you can't. What about this? What about that?" Again,
Hmm.
my situation is a little bit different because I kind of owe people some things,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
I understand where they're coming from, but it's not like I tried to hide things from them
Hmm.
in process. So when I show them some uh, leap forwards in life, so later on, like,
Hmm.
oh, well, you're you're they don't even like call or text or anything like that to go, hey, how you been? How's this? Oh,
Hmm.
sounds good. Or or at least like have an open environment. Like, hey, what would you like to discuss? So, well,
Yep.
I want to get through the formalities and whatnot, and then we can talk about business. And you know,
Hmm.
it's not like I really want formalities to last 5-10 minutes. Like, oh, hey, how are you? Hey, I'm pretty good. What we did when we first came up. I told you I was like, I'm a little bit less than what I was earlier or last month.
Hmm.
I'm still pretty good.
Hmm.
We got into the subject now,
Yep.
right into, hey, you owe me this. When am I going to get it? I'm like, nice to see you too.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
Like,
man. Hmm.
I guess I'd get it if we saw each other every day and or saw each other. Um, I haven't seen him in probably 3 years, so
Mm.
to talk to me like we've talked almost
Yeah.
every day is kind of like, okay, well, we haven't talked in 3 years. I don't really know who you are anymore, so don't
Hmm.
talk like I'm I'm not worth. I don't know. Don't talk to me like uh, we aren't anything to each other. I don't know. However,
Yeah.
how to word it.
No, I get it. I get exactly what you're saying. I get it. Yeah, it's again, it's you know those who are for you, man. You know those who are in support. You know those who, in a sense, just want something out of you, or in a sense, like you said, they're just waiting for that moment, or actually, they're not hoping for that moment. But then, if the moment does come to where you do, like you said, start making you make it in terms of financially, the money that you kind of wanted, work in what you're doing and then they're like, "Oh man, do you remember this?" Or "Hey, let me do this." I even hear in regards to certain people who, end up making it or quote unquote have success in terms of finances, where then you have family members trying to kill them. Like they actually set up hitmen to actually just rid them away. And then it's like they find out later, it's like, "Oh yeah, your auntie tried to kill you." It's like, what? Like, it's just you just have all these tragic things, man, that kind of stem from the aspect of like you said, people dreams are to destroy yours.
Yeah, and I think that's true in just about everybody. I know I've been on the wishing somebody else's dreams wouldn't come true. I don't think it.
Mm,
I think it was more of like anybody I knew. But I guess let's take this and mind you, this was when I had a different mindset when I was jealous and envious of people. So
yeah.
when DJ Khaled came out with his album "Suffering from Success,"
Yeah.
like bro, you're successful. There's no suffering for you. But that
Hmm.
was a closed minded statement. I mean, I didn't say it to him. I didn't post it anywhere. I just thought it. But it was like, well, I don't know what successful is. So
Hmm.
who am I to say that he's not suffering from his success in any way? Like I don't understand that perspective, so I can't I can't judge that perspective.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I get that.
if somebody gets something, as soon as somebody is doing good, something else has to happen, or something. The forces of nature have to try to bring you down and see if you thrive or if you fall into the if you fall back into the pit.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, this is good, man. This is good. This is good. Let me ask you this question here, and this is for, I guess, in a sense, just me, in a sense, wanting to understand um your aspect of, I guess, like how you see yourself when it comes to depression. Because again, I know that's something that we all have probably dealt with. But when it comes to you and depression and you get, going back into those dark pits or places that you sometimes have mentioned, would you say, or I guess in some sense, how would you say that you start to understand or realize or know that you're heading there again? Like how do you realize that you're heading into your depressed states or moments?
I think it's sorry, I lose my voice.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I think it's for a lot of things. Like I think I go back to like being 3 and 4 and learning like shapes and patterns and whatnot.
Hmm.
I think with depression it's the same thing. You have to understand the patterns of what you're going through.
Hmm.
Understand the first thing. If you understand the very first thing that brings you to that point, I mean, obviously you'd have at least for me, you'd have to
Yeah.
understand each point as it happens to understand where you are at in your depressive cycle. Um,
Mm.
I should also mention that when you're depressed, those days where you don't feel like you want to end everything,
Yeah.
those are those are I guess how do I word that? Depression has weird cycles. So you feel depressed, and then you feel a little bit better than when you were depressed, and you go, oh well, maybe I'm getting better. So you kind of just try not to mess with that 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 feeling of
Yeah.
feeling a little bit better. But if you
Mm-hmm.
don't actively try to counteract that depression, you'll go from rock bottom to a little bit better to you'll find a new rock bottom,
Yeah.
and you'll continue going down as far as you'll as far as you will let it.
Mm-hmm.
So in
Mm-hmm.
order to do that, you have to understand the patterns or understand the environment that is affecting you to
Mm.
really understand how, and I don't really like to use this word because it was overused, but how it triggers you, how it uh, changes your mood. Even you might not even notice it right away. You
Yeah.
might it might be something that happened. You go, oh well, whatever. It's just one thing. It's just this, just that, and then but your actions are showing that you're a little bit bothered by it. And with each new thing that goes wrong, you know how people go, well, this my grandpa died last week,
Mm-hmm.
and I just sat there stone faced. I had dry eye. I didn't cry. I didn't feel anything.
Yeah. My
But then
condolences. Yeah.
last week I made some food and then I dropped on the floor and I cried hysterically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's you feel numb to the tragic events because every day, especially if you're being abused, every day feels like a tragedy. So
Yeah.
when it's like, well, look at the silver lining. They don't have to deal with the tragedies anymore.
Yeah.
They're they're gone. They're at peace. So in a sense, you feel that that release of pressure. You don't feel like crying, but you feel like I wouldn't even say jealous or envious on that either, but like wanting to not feel the burdens on you, and you know that the only way that's going to happen is if you're no longer alive.
Mm-hmm.
You'll always have burdens and whatnot when you're alive, and to quote 50 Cent,
Mm-hmm.
death is easy. That's why life is so hard.
Yeah, that's what life is so hard. Yeah. Yeah.
That's just the reality. But
Mm-hmm.
how many people don't understand that reality? Um, you have to understand patterns. For me, it's the voice. The voice in my head is the first thing that goes, "Hey, why don't we do this instead? Hey, why don't we do this instead? It'll be okay. It'll be okay."
Yeah.
And it just positive reinforcement. It goes, "Well, now I don't want to do this because I feel sad. Now I don't want to do this because I
Mm-hmm.
feel upset. I feel angry. I feel depressed." And it just you give this voice an inch, and it'll take a mile.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you give to it, the less it the little voice in your head is the narcissist. It is the
Yeah.
narcissist side. It's I
Mm-hmm.
want to do what I want to do, and I don't want to do what other people want me to do. I don't. I mean, whatever. There's a sense in that where that's justifiable, but you can't just go, well, I don't want to work today because I don't want to. And again, we all need mental health days and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're just making excuses, so many excuses for everything
Yeah.
that you just can't make those excuses because if you let those excuses dictate your life, you're going to
Yeah.
be nowhere and you're going to be like, well, now I got to be frantic and try to get my life in order. And then you're not thinking about the ramifications and the positives and negatives of all the decisions you're going to be making in that short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, you pay the price and you're not even worse off because you tried to do everything in such a small little window of life
Yep.
because you wasted so much life before you figured you had to make up for it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And for me, I think that's the big test too. Is when you lose everything, it's how do you how do you react to that? How do you process that? How do you overcome it?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
it's the mindset.
It's the mindset. Yeah. 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 I love that, man. I love that. And I love that you seem to be very aware too of yourself. Like I've again, initially me and you met through poetry. you know. Yeah, and poetry, actually, I think me and you both could actually argue that poetry in some sense ties into mental health very much so. Um, I think there's a lot of correlation there. Um, to where you kind of have that aspect of spitting out what's truly in your heart and in your mind and in your thoughts into words, and then having those words in some sense become a soliloquy or some type of, you know, uh, pleasant frequency to the ear through poetry. But, tying it back to mental health and then seeing how you can convey and identify and make your mental health transparent, Isaac, man, it baffles me, bro. Like you have blown me away through your perspectives. I'm serious. Through your perspectives, through your self analysis, through your way to step outside of yourself, or even in some sense to step inside of yourself and actually look around and see what it is that you've analyzed or you don't like. You still need work here. And yeah, I still see this here. I still can tell that I don't have this here. I remember back then, like you stated just now, you said that you had moments where you did want to see others' downfalls and you were maybe a bit jealous or you didn't want to see them succeed. Like you were so transparent with it. Um, and I admire that, bro. I admire it. What do you think? What do you think helps you be comfortable with that? Because we're recording right now. What makes you so comfortable with showcasing and saying all of this?
Uh, I think it's I think it's more of an I don't know. I think when I've had to live most of my life trying to be perfect
Mm,
and and being expected to be perfect by my parents,
mm,
by siblings, and by this and by that, and it kind of bleeds into, well, if they think I need to be perfect, I think I need to be perfect too, because that's the mindset.
mm-hmm. Yep.
And when you want to be perfect, you don't want to make any mistakes, and when you don't want to make any mistakes, you don't do anything.
Yep.
So,
Mm-hmm.
in that sense, I have to go, okay, well, I'm going to make mistakes anyway, but we're all human. We are
Mm-hmm.
all going to be making mistakes. We are all going to be on a learning curve. Some
Mm-hmm.
curves are going to be bigger than others, but we're all on a learning curve. And as long as I don't, as long as I'm not racist, or I'm not this, or I'm not
Mm-hmm.
trying to really polarize something and try to make enemies. I make enemies
Mm-hmm.
by just telling the truth. So I don't need to try very hard.
Yeah. Yep.
but
Yep.
it's true. Like, we're all humans. We're all going to make.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you talk about transparency. The question I sent you, I had that.
Mm-hmm.
I had a little bit of thought in my mind. I'm like, I don't know how he's going to take it, because obviously it infers a specific
Oh
ethnicity.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
But I didn't want to answer the question myself, because obviously I'm not that specific ethnicity. So I
Yeah.
don't want
Mm-hmm.
to try to step on toes in any way, because even if we both understand that that's not really, experiences aren't related to race.
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
guess in some ways it could be, but
In
in the
some
general,
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
not not really.
Yeah.
Um, I think us both understanding that um, is great, but for the general population, they want to add that in, and I've talked about it so often. Like, dude, the
Mm-hmm.
only reason I see race right now is because you keep bringing it up.
Mm-hmm.
Keep bringing up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what about these? What about
Yeah.
what about this? What about that? And like, bro, people,
Yeah.
the color of the skin does not matter.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
In like, oh man,
Mm-hmm.
who who
Who
cares? Because
cares?
like, I'm talking to you from, I want to talk to you from like a logical standpoint, or a mental standpoint, not
Yeah.
the surface. The I don't know, the surface level is never good. It's never enough. It's never giving you any part of the story that means something. You have to go beneath the surface.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think in that sense, I have to understand who I am and what I know and what I believe in, but I also have to take into consideration
Mm-hmm.
other, because not everybody thinks the same way. You and I think differently on plenty of things. We
Yeah.
probably we probably don't know plenty of the things yet, but
Hmm.
there are probably going to be plenty of things that we don't agree on, and that's
Yeah.
perfect because we're humans and
Exactly.
we have our own opinions, our own experiences.
Hmm.
But you know, I don't know. I forgot the question. I just kind of went on a rant.